Hello, everybody, and welcome on the Lights on Data show.
Yay.
I am George.
And I'm Deanna.
And today we are going to talk about really how you can overcome those data storytelling challenges. And we have two amazing guests with us today.
Which I have the honor of introducing. Cassidy is passionate about driving change. He started his career streamlining industrial operations with software and lean operating principles. What he enjoys most about marketing, what he's doing now, is the rapid rate of change that technology brings to the world. His experience and leadership in navigating this change includes strategy and execution, brand and positioning, content lead, digital marketing, product marketing and sales support, and customer engagement and advocacy. He is now VP Marketing at NarrativeScience. He also has a podcast. It's called the Leading with Data podcast, which I think is a very catchy name. And it's a podcast about data or for data and analytics leaders.
Our kind of podcast. Our kind of podcast.
Exactly. And he believes that with open-minded people, you can achieve great outcomes with the right leadership and execution. And I agree. That is beautiful. And our second guest is Nate. Welcome, Nate. Nate received his PhD from the Intelligent Information Laboratory at Northwest University. That's awesome.
Yeah.
His focus now at NarrativeScience as chief scientist is on ensuring that the fundamental architecture and capabilities of Quill, which we're going to talk about today, are industry leading and provide value to our customers today and into the future. He's the author of Let Your People Be People. That's my kind of title. He has 9 patents from his work at NarrativeScience and more pending. Welcome, Cassidy and Nate. We're so happy to have you today.
Thanks for having us on the show. It's great to be here and the kind introduction. Very, very nice of you.
Yeah, nothing's more awkward than listening to yourself being introduced.
Well,
nine patents, Nate. I thought 9 patents. That seems a little low.
It is low. Yeah, that's an out of date number. We're doing.
Is it 20? Because I found 2 numbers in 2 different places, and then one of them was 20, and I'm like, I'm gonna go with the lower number just to make sure that I'm not exaggerating.
So I swear I only know this because I was talking to our CEO about it yesterday. But the real number is 37 for me.
Wow. Goodness!
Bunch of patents. So there's a whole bunch. I mean, one of the just to shift briefly into narrative science stuff. Like when we first started the company 10 years ago, there was a whole bunch of sort of green field open in the patent area. And so that was one of we knew we were going to be doing cool things, and we knew that we thought those things were going to be, we knew those things were going to be valuable. And so we've been pretty aggressive about trying to patent the stuff that is actually unique to us and is important to our products. And I've been lucky to work with a bunch of people on doing that. So I'm on a lot of those.
Wow.
I think that's amazing to do these things on a daily basis. Groundbreaking things. That's really amazing.
Yeah.
So congratulations. And you guys seem very passionate about it too.
Well, Nate, it does seem like every few months you get out a patent. So they're all related to narrative
Nate
science.
wakes up in the morning and said, I have another idea.
I mean, it's always a big, there's all of these are me and 4 or 5 other narrative science people working. But yeah, it's nice that we try not to just invent things because they're neat, like that. Mm-hmm. I was in academia, I got my PhD. That was, I know Georgia in that space, and there's a whole bunch of, that's a great way to approach things for trying to just push the envelope. And for us, we're trying to build a company. We're trying to build products that are really impactful and important to people. And so it's not that we just kind of have ideas and go and patent them real quick. It's like, hey, there's a new thing that needs to be in the world for us to, deliver this type of value or say this type of thing or provide this type of capability. And if it does exist, we love using third party and open source libraries, and we have no desire to, reinvent the wheel when it doesn't, we don't need to, but then there are places where we need to. And that's when we start looking at patents and that kind of thing.
Beautiful. Well, you're bringing new stuff into the world and things that are needed, so it's very much appreciated. And I know we have, a few people joining us today, so we want to say hello. And, we already have a fan, it seems. I hear Preet love narrative science. Well, who doesn't?
Oh, this is all.
Kate.
Hi, Kate.
It's the hometown crowd right here.
Hi, Susan. Hi, Bennett. We're going to keep on putting hellos and comments from people. So please say hello as you're coming in and let us know where you're coming from. And, what challenges do you have with data storytelling?
Correct.
And let's get into that. Nate and Cassidy both have great stories to tell, great personal stories, great work stories. But when it comes to, the job that you've interacted with so many business people, what are some of the challenges that you see that they're facing when they're telling stories? Or data stories, really?
Go for it, Nate.
Yeah, so there's a couple. I would say there's a couple things there. One is there's the idea that people don't know they need to be telling stories, right? There's a lot of there's this idea that if you put up a dashboard, then you tell your people to look at a dashboard, you make it available, and your job is done then, and you can expect your people to go, be data driven and be in there every day and hear numbers being thrown out in meetings, and there's a lot of deep justifications for decisions getting made. And so I think there's a lot of people that don't realize that the role of stories that stories can and sort of need to be playing if you actually want people to be doing things with data. And the idea that a dashboard is enough for business users in particular, it's a completely reasonable idea. Like, that's not on the face of it wrong, but the last 20 years have shown us that it doesn't work, right? It doesn't happen. And we've tried training people, we've tried all these different things, and we just sort of haven't seen the uptake, we haven't seen the usage, haven't seen the open rates on dashboards. All that stuff has stayed really flat. And so then people are starting to look, well, how do you actually get people to act on data? And that's where this idea of data storytelling has come out. And then, which is the right, or we believe is the right delivery mechanism. And then the challenge is how do you actually do this storytelling at scale, right? Because as you it's easy to sort of hear about data storytelling. It's like, oh, there's like the viz and there's insights and there's context and it all sounds lovely. And then now somebody has to go put that together. And it's like, oh man, this is a project. This is like a sort of a big effort. The whole part about dashboards is nice because you just throw them up once and you pay kind of a fixed cost and then they stay available. But at least with the manual way of doing the data storytelling, you have to, you do it over and over, and you do work and a story comes out, and you do work and a story comes out. And so I'd say there's kind of two big hurdles. The first is recognizing that the role of data storytelling and that it needs to be playing. And then the second is, how do you actually do that at any kind of scale? And that's where we come in. We'll be talking about this more throughout the hour, I think. But our NarrativeScience and Lexio in particular, one of our main product exists to automate that data storytelling process. And that's sort of, once you get past the first hurdle of understanding that dashboards aren't doing what you need to do, and then you hit the second hurdle of scale, that's where we can, and our products can provide a lot of value.
And I'm looking forward to find out more about this. But I just want to say you're absolutely right, and I think I know you know that. But you're absolutely right. I feel a lot of resources really need to go into this. A lot of skills, a lot of artistic sides as well that need to go into development of these data stories and visualizations, and especially with the dashboard, like you said, you put it out there, it doesn't quite work out, it doesn't get the uptake. And then you think, well, maybe it's because of the tool. Let's invest into another data visualization tool. Maybe that's the issue, though it's not. And it's it's great when you can do good data storytelling, but again, that requires skills and knowledge and a bit of artistic side. And most often, when that's not done right, you feel like your end user is coming back to you asking, okay, well, what am I supposed to look at here? What is this telling me?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, less so now, because it's great to hear that you agree, George. I'm struck as, I guess over the last maybe 12, 18 months, we've developed more and more confidence saying these kind of things, because first it kind of feels a little bit risky. There's, the BI industry is huge and there's just so much money and investment in it. And to come out and say, like, when people aren't really looking at dashboards, right? Like this isn't working for most of the users. We were very hesitant to say that a while ago. And it's, as everyone sort of agrees and is more comfortable hearing that message and echoing that message, it's like, oh yeah, we can really start saying this more confidently. And it's, everybody agrees. It's funny. We talk to, sort of bigwigs at BI companies. They know it's not working for those business users. And so, yeah, we're getting more and more comfortable sort of saying that message explicitly.
Absolutely. And Susan here is mentioning that, another challenge with data storytelling is the accurate data to tell the story. So the data behind the story. And yes, I think that goes into any project that concerns data. We need to make sure it's clean, it's understood, it's trustworthy. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Shruti here has a question that if you're working with a company as a data analyst and got work of Python and SQL, I think that Tableau dashboards will for sure bring a lot more clarity. How can I convince them to try and give dashboard making a chance? And that's a good question. And what we're going to be addressing here is, maybe that's not enough. Maybe a dashboard on its own will not be enough. So I think Nate and Cassidy will go a little bit deeper into that.
All right. So tell us what you do. So what does NarrativeScience do, and what does Lexio do in your product?
Yeah, I can jump in on this. So we're a company that was founded 10 years ago out of research at Northwestern University. Our mission is to make data understandable for everyone. And if you think about where we started as a company, we started doing that with Little League box scores. And we still do that today with a company called Game Changer. So if you're a parent out there who has kids in Little League or little softball leagues, you may be using the Game Changer app. From there, we got into the business side of this, and you can think about this in a journey of threes. The first journey was custom reporting in big organizations where they had a lot of analysts doing, manual reporting. So think of the compliance, think of risk, think of portfolio commentary, think of in-store reporting. And early on in the life of NarrativeScience, we automated that. From there, what we started hearing from customers was, hey, listen, we do a lot of manual reporting, a lot of data storytelling around BI tools.
Yep.
Can you solve that for us? And so that was when we built our product Quill about 5 years ago to solve that. And what Quill, we challenged Nate and the engineering team to do was, if I'm looking at a dashboard, can you describe in a narrative form what's happening in the dashboard? And we were successful doing that. And we thought, listen, that's the future. That's what is going to make everybody adopt data. But what we noticed and what we heard from our customers is, while that helped, there was still a huge cohort of users in a company who weren't going to the dashboard. And so we started spending some time understanding what was going on with those types of users. And what we realized is they didn't want to be analysts and go to a dashboard and try to interpret, that we had an opportunity to explain data to them in a completely different way. And we built Lexio 2 years ago to do that. We think of it as a data storytelling product, or the first analytics product built for end users, for business users and not analysts. And we'll get in and Nate will show you how that works. But that's been the journey of our company. But the mission has always been to make data understandable for everyone. And this is where we are today, is we think that the next journey in that progression is to give a tool to business users that they can actually use and understand in order to make better decisions for their company.
That's fantastic. And Cassidy, does it, just apply with big data sets or any type of data?
Yeah. So what we did with Lexio is we asked ourselves, where should we start? Because anytime you're building a product, you have to start somewhere. And what we realized is we wanted to start with operational metrics. And those are the metrics or the KPIs that govern what businesses do day in and day out. Think of that as sales reporting, marketing reporting, production facilities, hiring, et cetera. Because when we looked at what people were looking at and asking for day in and day out is, how am I doing in my business? I have goals, and how am I tracking against those goals? There's two key dimensions in operational reporting that we wanted to tackle, which tie directly to data storytelling and what Nate mentioned around scale. One is the breadth. So what we've noticed in companies is they're data rich and insight poor. And so how could we build a tool to bring more insights of the data they have to more people? And the second one is frequency. So if you think about data storytelling today, or how we consume data, we're consuming it largely on a monthly or weekly basis, meaning we get together in a room, we look at a dashboard, somebody explains it to us or writes it up. Right. But your business and your data changes every day, every minute of the day. So how can we build a technology that can make sense of that data as it's happening and surface up the insights that people need, on a daily basis, on an hourly basis? So we feel like that's the paradigm to running your business. It's not things are happening in your data and you're going to look at it monthly or weekly. Things are happening in your data and you need to understand that daily. And so those are the reasons we tackled operational metrics. One, because of the disparity between the data and the insight, and the disparity between the frequency, which is most people only look maybe 4 times a month versus looking at it on a constant basis.
Absolutely. So wouldn't it be cool if, as soon as maybe a trend kind of appears or something new shows up, you get a notification, or you have access to a board that you can kind of see.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I like how you're thinking about that, George.
One slight sort of on that, like one slight correction, a friendly correction to you there, Cassidy. You said something about being in the tool every day, and I think it's less being in the tool every day. Like we don't want you to every morning you come in and spend an hour with Lexio. Like that's not what we're solving for. We're solving for every day you come into work knowing the data that impacts you and the insights that you need to make decisions. And whether you pull that out of the desktop app or the on your laptop when you get into work, that's cool. Whether you get push notifications on the train end, that's cool. Whether you listen to a text-to-speech voice where you do a podcast about your BI news that you listen to on the car ride in, that's cool. Like we want, however you get that information, and we think Lexio is the best way we know of to provide that to you. But we're not putting ads on the screen and trying to get you to spend as much time in the app. We really want you to spend as much time as possible, doing your job and acting on the data, but having that confidence and that just the knowledge of what's actually happening on the ground on a really frequent basis, like Cassidy mentioned.
Yeah. So my vision of this, like, just to be selfish for a minute, like as a executive at a company, is I get up every morning and what do? You look at your phone, whether we want to admit it or not.
Yep.
And you may be looking at email or Slack or LinkedIn or Twitter, but we're not looking at what's happening in our business at that point in time. Like we go do that later, maybe in a day, or maybe not even that day. We do it at the end of the week. What we want that paradigm to shift is I should be looking at what's going on in the business. What do I need to know that day in order to be able to do my job better or lead my team better? Mm-hmm. And so, like, to Nate's point, like, this isn't about in-depth analysis. This is about making sure that you're situationally aware of what's happening in your business so you can be your best self.
Oh, yeah, that's great. And what do you think, we're not looking at our business right away? Do you think it's the medium? Do you think it's, I have to log in, I have to access this and that, 5 clicks further, and I still maybe don't understand what I'm looking at, and I can't do it off my phone?
Great question.
Yeah, I think it's partly the phone. Dashboards are really hard on a phone, and it's partly like when I think of dashboards, it's very I don't know. It's like why do people stop at McDonald's on the way into work and get a Egg McMuffin? Like you could totally make your own Egg McMuffin at home. You got eggs in the fridge. You could whip up some biscuits. You definitely got flour. You got milk. Like that's all available. It's cheaper. We should all be doing that. But it's nobody. I mean, some people do that sometimes, and for special occasions. And when when you really want to go deep, when you're trying to impress people, that's when you make your own biscuits and Egg McMuffins. But most of the times we're busy and we're tired and we have day jobs, right? Most of us are not analysts. We didn't become a marketing manager or an executive or customer service rep to spend a bunch of time in dashboards. We want the answer. We want the insight. We want to swing through and get a cup of coffee and a sandwich. And we just so far in human history, there hasn't been a way to sort of get that information out in a way that just sort of aligns with the way we like to consume other things, which is we want to make it easy on ourselves and really spend our time and our effort and our brain power on the things that matter most to us and are sort of the core part of our job, is not the kind of stuff that we need to do around the edges.
Yeah, I want to add another component, because I do think there's a part of this is like the delivery mechanism and how the data comes to you, but there's also a huge gap, and I'm sure you've talked about this on your show, around literacy in organizations and the ability to understand and kind of work with and analyze and communicate data. But, taking it back to the kid analogy, like my son plays soccer. If he wants to be great at soccer, he has to practice every day or multiple times a day. It's not like you can just go play soccer once a week or once a month and be great at it. It's the same thing with data. Like if you want to be literate, you need to be in it. You need to be learning and asking questions and having it explained to you. And people aren't in data frequently enough to be good at it. So yes, we need to train people and put programs in place to make an organization more literate, but you also just have to be in the data to become more literate. And
right.
The tools today don't facilitate the ability to do that easily.
Right. So, I think we're going to have so many more questions, but why don't we go into really seeing what narrative science is providing?
I wanted to ask something before that, though.
Okay.
So to raise people's interest, can you give us one or two success stories, something that you heard from your clients when using the tool? Just so we're even more interested in finding out about it.
Yeah, I'll give you kind of two scenarios, success stories, and things that we typically see over and over. One is on the revenue side of a business. So think of it as your sales organization, or you're in a retail kind of commerce business, and your data is changing frequently, and your team is not sophisticated from a sales organization perspective to be able to be in the data all the time, because they should be selling. But yet they need to understand what is happening in the data. And that data could be pipeline, it could be revenue, it could be leads coming in from the marketing team. And so the success story is taking, let's say, a manufacturing organization with 150 salespeople and arming them with a tool like this, where it just tells them what they need to know, because they're not going to go log into a Tableau dashboard, and they certainly aren't going to go dig through Salesforce, as an example, to look at a report. Mm-hmm. And so that success is really taking a company that was not data-driven in a manufacturing setting, kind of traditional business, and making them data-driven. So they had a big investment in data, but they didn't have a mechanism for putting it into the hands of the people in their organization in a way that they could consume it. And so that's what we did with Lexio, and now we're bringing more data, more insights, so they can make better decisions daily to that sales organization. The other one that we see quite often is kind of a spin off of that, and that is where we see distributed teams in management. It is a massive problem today. So think of this as grocery stores or retail chains or manufacturing facilities, where you have somebody who's probably looking at the data and understands it very well at a central level, but you need to arm plant managers or store managers with data that's consistent so they can make better decisions. So it's really looking at front lines where they aren't sophisticated on data, but they need the operational performance in order to run the thing that they're running. Call center, store, plant, distribution center. That's where we, insurance companies, if you think about insurance companies, they have many different, agents out there in the field. So that's kind of where we've seen early on is there's people who aren't sophisticated. We're trying to bring adoption of data to an organization, a frontline, like a sales organization, as part of a transformation, or we have a distributed workforce where we need to get personalized insight to a specific individual who's out in the field, and there's no way to tell them a data story because you can't put an analyst right next to them.
Yeah. So what do you think, Diana? Our interest is like
yes,
at its peak right now? All right.
So let's share the other screen, maybe?
Yeah. Can you see this?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay. So
tell us all about it.
Yeah. So this is Lexio. This is our core product. And you can see it looks nothing like a dashboard. And this is, when Cassidy said this is the first BI tool built for business users, this is what we mean by that. So this is, if you're you're in marketing, you're in customer success, you're in sales, you're an engineer, you're in HR, one of those types of areas of the company, this is the kind of the tool for you. And this is what you see when you log in. So you see, this is what we call the summary page. So right at the top, we've got the metrics that matter most to me. And so typically with our customers, there'll be an admin or an analyst that will maybe set up some defaults here for new users. But this is also totally under my control if I want to change what metrics I'm tracking most regularly. But the idea here is these are the numbers that matter most to me. And whenever I sign in to Lexio again on mobile or desktop here, I can at a glance see how these numbers are doing. So we got a little bit of a viz to kind of orient you. We got the number, and then we've got the very sort of Lexio, unique to Lexio part here of a nice little text explanation of what's happening, including how that changed over time and what the drivers of that were. And then we also show the goals, how you're tracking towards your goal. And so this is, it's always there, it's always in the same place. You can always whip out your phone and see this at just a glance of these numbers. And then down below, Lexio is applying some more of its own intelligence. And like you teed up nicely for us, George, wouldn't it be great if Lexio actually detected something happening in the data and pushed that to you? That's what's happening here with notable insights. And so these are changing all the time. Every time we refresh the data, Lexio is renewing its analysis of what's happening. And so you can see here a few good things happening. Number of leads is up. That's awesome. New pipeline across all sales is up. New pipeline is also up for the enterprise sales team as well.
So the thumbs up is dependent on the positivity of the message?
Yes, absolutely. So that's, and we can talk more about how that knows, but that kind of, I mean, you can just see that this doesn't, it's not all blue and white. It's not all a bunch of lines. We try to make this light. We try to make this feel, I think we're pretty successful making this feel like a more consumer facing app, right? We've all gotten really used to Twitter and Reddit and Apple News and these things that are really nice. And we want to bring some of that, both the functionality and the sort of the aesthetic and the feel of that to Lexio as well.
Yeah, and Bennett here is mentioning the font is a nice touch, gives it a journalistic feel.
Yeah, that's great for. I'm glad you called that out, Bennett. We've got a crackerjack design team that has done a great job with this, and a lot of what we've done is try to walk that line of, we want the font to feel pretty, like journalism, like you're saying. Yeah, and there's like a mix of how friendly versus how professional. Because we want people to, also trust the numbers, and this can't be sort of Comic Sans font everywhere because this is your business data. But we also don't want it to feel boring and impersonal.
Yeah, Ben, you'd be amazed at how much discussion went into font.
Yes. And these hands, and so another cool thing you can do here. So this is, we're seeing everything, good and bad news. There's 16 notable insights, and Lexio is floated 3 of them to the top. But if I change this, I can focus on just the red flags. If I feel like fixing something and I want to know what are the areas to go fix, this will call out areas to work on, places where there's this problem's looming. And one of the nice things about this is that the way Lexio knows red flags versus bright spots is it knows a lot about the actual metrics it's talking about. So typically when you buy a dashboard tool, it'll work on any type of data, which is great, but it kind of doesn't know anything about any data, right? You come in, you say, hey, this column, yeah, it's a currency. Hey, this column, this is a dimension to use. And you sort of, you teach it a little bit, you configure it a little bit, but none of that sort of scales either to your next dashboard or to other customers. Mm-hmm. But Lexio actually ships with a knowledge base. It knows a lot about the world, regardless of any particular customer. And so it knows, for instance, that number of leads going up is a good thing. It knows that a bigger pipeline and more pipeline is better than less pipeline. And that's a thing that's stored in our ontology. It knows about those things. It knows about salespeople, and they make deals, and that bookings going up is good, and profit is the outcome of revenue minus expenses, and those types of relationships. So it knows a lot about that already, which is great because you don't have to teach it that over and over. It guesses and sorts of tries to apply as much of its own knowledge as it can. You can tweak it. Absolutely, you can change it, or if it doesn't know something in your data, you can teach it about that in particular. But in general, it's a lot more like sort of like you're feeling like you're hiring somebody that has some experience, right? It's not a screwdriver that you can use in a million different ways. It's somebody that has like, yeah, I kind of know this. I've worked with other customers. I know this domain. I know the types of questions people ask, and you get the advantage of all that knowledge and judgment that Lexio brings. Very
cool. So it's not that when you onboard this tool into your company, you need to configure it to say, well, this would be good, this would be bad. It really knows based on the industry and what it's looking at.
Yeah, and we have some humility around that. Like if we don't know your what's in your data, you can teach Lexio about it. If we say bookings going up is good, but for some reason for you bookings going up is bad, you can change that. Like we're not trying to box anybody out. Mm-hmm. But we've also, one of the things we've learned, like Cassidy has mentioned, we've built a few different products in this space, and our first app there, which we started at 11 years ago. We spent a lot of time configuring the system over and over again for different customers, and we knew how deathly dull it is to teach the system the same thing over and over again when it forgets that, oh, here's a new project, and also in this project, bookings going up is bad, and also in this project, here's how to say a change was significant. we did that work over and over, and we promised ourselves that we would never do that work again, and we would never ask anyone else to do that work again. And so we've really embodied that knowledge. We've got it out of our employees' heads and into the system.
That's fantastic.
And so to flex a little bit, so I won't go super deep on here, but over on the left here, these are called topics. These are kind of like these are different areas of the company that you can follow. We're trying to, borrow as much as we can from a lot of the other newsfeed products that people use. And so this idea of following, similar to Twitter, Reddit, or any of those other services where you register interest in something. I said I'm interested in consumer sales. And so now I'm getting notable insights in what else happened cards coming from the consumer sales topic. And Lexio knows enough about how to watch metrics in that space and push things to me. But then if I want to go deeper here, if something catches my eye, I just hit this explore button. And this is really where we flex more on the data story side of Lexio. And this is a lot of our core IP. And back to the patent thing, there's a lot of, you're looking at a lot of patents right now on screen. But this is a sort of full story within Lexio. And just like its knowledge, it already knows a lot about bookings and leads. Lexio also knows a lot about BI and the types of questions people ask and the types of follow-up questions they have and what they consider interesting results and what they don't. And so nothing here, none of this text you saw on screen had to be configured or built by an analyst. It's all generated purely from Lexio. I said I was interested in bookings. I could change this metric to something else, and Lexio would just go off and write that story immediately for me as well.
So this is fascinating.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. And we have very nice comments from Susan. Love the visuals. Whoa, from Bennett. People are really impressed by this.
That's cool. I can only see the screen, so I'm operating dark. So thanks for I'm glad people are digging it. And just to call it a couple things here, we have a similar story orientation spot at the top here to give you the just at a glance how the number's been changing. But then digging into the story, you see, we talk about how it compares to historical values. The bookings is coming from 9 deals, so we open this up. There's this whole rich system of annotations, we call them in Lexio. So there's a lot of different parts of the story that you can click on, and Lexio sort of serves you up additional information about what you clicked on there. In this case, it's a table where I can dig into the deals that went into bookings. And then historical context of last year and last month. The driver analysis, this is super, super popular with our customers and our users. And so, this whole story sort of roughly corresponds to what would be a line chart and a dashboard. But the contents of the story would be pulling from a lot of different charts and sort of pieces of visualization, and the drivers is a big part of that. So here, Archer, Washington, a particular sales or a particular account exec, Atlanta, a type of lead source, but you can click into this and see more about how all your execs changed month over month, why Archer was the top. All this kind of driver analysis. This is on the component side. And then we also have a formula drivers analysis here about how the number of deals and the average size of deals went into changing bookings. And the cool thing here to call out with this is that we're about to release, I think it's sort of private beta now. We've got a whole calculated fields, new functionality to Lexio, where Lexio can calculate new metrics for your data that wasn't present in the data, which is a pretty classic sort of BI thing you can do. But the nice thing about Lexio is it knows that formula, and it can actually leverage that formula when it's writing a story. And so it's not, for us, it's not just, hey, we can add these two numbers, these two columns, and stick it in a third column. We can do that, but now when we're analyzing that third column, we can talk about those other two as drivers, or how have those changed? And are they correlated? Are they sort of anti-correlated? And again, that's all additional knowledge that goes into Lexio and helps it write better stories.
Wow. And are you surfacing, the logic behind that calculation as well, if anybody wants to look into it?
Yeah, I think we're not actually sort of making that visible, but Lexio knows what it's doing, and so we're tracking all this information. I don't think we found the right UX sort of modalities to expose it, but a lot of so this is all what's called natural language generation. The system has data, has some representation of what it wants to say, and it writes it out in English. And there's a lot of, if you've heard of GPT-3, or if you see Gmail, Gmail's auto-completing emails, a lot of that kind of stuff is working well, which is also NLG. But for us, it's really important to be accurate, right? We're writing stories about people's data, and so it has to be, this 65K has to be right. It can't be like, most of the time it's right, but sometimes it'll be something wrong because the ML model did something weird. So Lexio, one of the key parts of its architecture is that it understands what it's doing and why it's doing that, and is keeping track of that information. We use that a lot for internal debugging, but we're also interested in how do we expose that to users in a way that makes sense to them. Can you download the data that backs this as a CSV? Can you open, take the same data but throw it into Tableau because an analyst really wants to go dig deep on it? That's all kinds of stuff that we're talking about, haven't got to yet.
Well,
and then oh, sorry, go.
No, go ahead.
Okay, there's one more thing I want to touch on here, and then I can answer questions or anything. But over here, so this on the left, where you can't see my hands gesturing, this is the the main story. But then something else we really wanted to do is give people paths to follow, right? If you open a dashboard, it's there. You can dig into it, you can consume it or not. But when you get done with it, it's like, what do you do with it next, right? And so we want to give people make it very easy for them to continue sort of pulling or to actually act on that data. So. Yeah. On the action side, we're about to roll out a commenting system. We'll allow you to push to Slack soon, so we can have that. We'll have nice support for all the kinds of conversations and dialogue and debate that happens around data. That'll be able to happen in the tool here in the next few weeks. But what we have now is what we call follow-up questions, and that's on the right here. So what's happening is Lexio knows I'm interested in the story on the left about bookings this month. It knows that salesperson is a pretty good, is a dimension that's often related to bookings. And so it's saying, hey, if you're interested in this, you might want to break this down by salesperson as well. And so that, again, there was no work. Nobody had to come in and say, let me define all the correct follow-up questions. That's Lexio using its own knowledge. But when I click on that, now I'm at a whole new story. We call this a breakdown story. And I can see here now that, the increase mostly came from Archer Washington. He was also the best by total volume. Nina's struggling. I got a viz. If I want to dig in more on Archer Washington, I can click on him. And now Lexio is focusing the follow-up questions just on Archer Washington, so I could dig into tracking his bookings recently, something like that. And so the idea here is it makes it, this is just like every Twitter and Reddit and Apple News and every website's like, hey, because you're in Netflix and Amazon and Spotify and everything has that model of, if you're interested in X, you might also be interested in Y and Z. That's a modality and sort of paradigm that is proven really valuable and really engaging to people. And so we wanted to bring a lot of that into the BI space as well and make it very easy to just keep clicking and scrolling and digging in as things are interesting. And you can always pop back to the original story. We have these nice tabs. And then you can bookmark this. You can export all the tabs. Soon we'll be able to export all the tabs to PowerPoint. And so each one of these becomes just another a slide and a deck that you're putting together for a board meeting or something. You can share it out via email. So we have a lot of ways to sort of have to get those conversations going based on what you learn from the data.
Wow,
so that's Lexio in a nutshell. I'm happy to answer any questions or show anything if people are interested.
So this is like having an extra, BI developer or a data analyst on your team, and they're able to do the work very, very quickly.
Yeah, and it's really it's not. I would say it's more than an extra one. It's really kind of, we're shooting for. There's one of these for everybody. If your company could hire a really smart analyst that had nothing to do but partner with every employee in your org and make them as smart and informed and informed and just sort of confident in what they know as possible. That's what we're shooting for with Lexio. We kind of wanted to have some of that same friendly teammate kind of thing that's on your side. We want you to feel like Lexio is in your corner and has your back and is your kind of guy in the morning. So that's goes in again to the the style and then the UX and all that good stuff.
It makes you feel more confident when you come in front of other people or when you try to explain something as well. I would be
Yeah,
very proud to be able to say all these things
oh,
and to
that's
tell
awesome. Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah, that's one of the things. Like my mom was an 8th grade English teacher in public schools for 25 years, and she spent so much, sort of as her career went on, more and more became data driven and sort of doing all this testing stuff and entering all this stuff in. And she's a fantastic teacher, and it always made her feel dumb doing this data side of things, right? She thought she was an English teacher, she hadn't taken math in so long, yada yada. And it's like, no, Mom, you're really smart, and you're a fantastic teacher, you're super smart, and it's like the tool's fault. It is not your fault. And I think a lot of people have internalized that they don't get, everybody else gets it except for them, or they're lazy, or they are dumb, or whatever it is. And that I hate that. And we should be blaming the tools, right? And we should be working to come up with better tools. And that's what we're trying to do with Lexio.
So we have a few questions here. Well, I have a few questions too, but let's take a couple from the audience first. And Mike Nash here is asking, Mike, your name is not showing up for some reason, but you mentioned NLP GPT-3. Is there any AI built into the system to help projections or opportunities as well?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So there are places in the system, I don't know if there's any of the content on screen now, where we're projecting where bookings are going to be at the end of the quarter, that kind of stuff. And that's, for us, it's not. So we have that type of some of that content in the system. For us, we're not going to make our name on, we have the best predictive models for where some metric is going to be. There's a lot of people working in that space. That's fantastic. And really what we're trying to do is build on top of those and allow those to be incorporated into Lexio. And so when we do predictions and some of those projected numbers and looking for outliers, that kind of stuff, a lot of that is built on top of Facebook Profit, which is a nice open source library. We use that. We also have done sort of prototypes around allowing people to plug in their own analytics. Like, we know a lot of people have their own predictive ML models that they built out, and a great expense that predicts where numbers are going to be. In Lexio, we don't. We're happy to take other people's numbers there, and sort of incorporate those into the system. And the nice thing is that everything else around Lexio works the same. Instead of running our own predictive analysis, we'll call out to your endpoint and pull in whatever your prediction is, incorporate that into the story, and everything else just sort of works the way it typically would. So we do a little bit of that, but it's not. We do that because it helps make the stories better, and not because we've got a lot to say about it. But again, we're happy to have and excited about the idea of Lexio sitting on top of the parts of your stack or different models that people have built out already.
And Bennett has a comment here. I think one of the issues that GPT is fundamentally random, and as such is likely to generate random tokens. This is above my knowledge, but I don't know if you want to comment anything here.
Yeah, that's exactly. Bennett knows what he's talking about here. But yeah, that's. And we've done experiments with, if people hear GPT-3, you should absolutely Google it. It's super amazing. It's really impressive technology. It's built for
integration with Excel. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it demos really well. There's going to be a bunch of cool stuff coming out of that. And when you're in Gmail, the example I do is in Gmail. So I'm sure everybody has seen it, or most people have seen it. It's auto-completing, right? It's suggesting sort of the rest of the sentence for you.
Yep.
And there are lots of times it gets it right. And that's great. And you just hit tab and you save yourself, 2 seconds and maybe a typo from typing out the sentence. There are times where it's totally wrong and you just ignore it and you keep typing and it doesn't get in your way. And so they have really what they're solving for. And that's sort of, if you've heard of like transformer-based models and BERT, and there's a lot of interest in the space now. But what they're all trying to do is areas where they need super broad coverage. It works for any type of email, works in a bunch of different languages. And the cost of getting it wrong, it doesn't really matter. The cost is really low, right? You just have to type the rest of the sentence out yourself. And those type of models work really well. And that, the fact that random tokens are sort of popping in there is okay. For us, we don't care about writing. We don't write poetry. We don't write novels. We don't write limericks. We don't write greeting cards. Like Lexio, there's all types of content that Lexio does not generate. We've really built it to tell these data stories. And so for us, we've got a much narrower domain. Within BI stories and data stories, we can cover, basically any domain, manufacturing and retail and go-to-market and HR and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But so we have a narrower focus, but then like accuracy is paramount for us. And so our numbers are always going to be right. We can guarantee that you can act on these numbers, but they're going to be as right as the customer's data is. I guess is that they will accurately reflect what's in the data. And so for us, that's really important to be able to tell customers that. We've had to sign in the past. We've had sort of compliance things where we've had to talk to lawyers and really confirm that it's not going to launch into some kind of racist tirade in the middle of a sentence like a lot of these systems can do. It's not going to do that. We really know what it's going to say, and what it's going to say it will be true.
Awesome. And as this LinkedIn user is mentioning, fantastic. Sounds like you have a powerful system here. And we have a question from Raja too. A great user experience. Does it support on-the-fly analytics or batch analytics?
I don't know. So I don't know exactly what I mean by on-the-fly and batch analytics there, but in general, the way the model works today is people push data to NarrativeScience in a lot of different ways. We can connect to Stitch and pull it in from your sales, or through Stitch and pull it in directly. You can FTP things to our S3 buckets. You can push. You can do all kinds of different ways. And then we pull that in, we do analysis on top of that and write these stories. And we do some like pre-caching and that kind of stuff. But in general, you can just keep clicking through, and Lexio is writing these stories on the fly for me. So you never get to a place where it says like, oh, I haven't written that story yet, come back tomorrow. It's writing it right when you click through. And then down the road, I think later this year, we're going to start connecting directly to big cloud data warehouses like Snowflake and those kind of things, and being able to do more direct querying there to sort of working through the balance of performance and where the analysis happens, as well as just data governance and that kind of stuff. So we'll continue developing in that space and figuring out the right model and supporting different models for different types of users that have either more data but less governance, or vice versa, and sort of building out Lexio's capabilities there to allow us to work with more customers.
So Nate, it writes it as often as you're loading your screen, you're accessing the tool, but also as frequent as you're pushing new data into it.
Yeah, so exactly. So when you push data in, that's when Lexio does its analysis. It looks for those notable insights. It looks for outliers or trends changing direction, or goals being met, and triggering pushing cards to the newsfeed. And then those can become mobile push alerts or email alerts, that kind of thing. So that newsfeed is getting updated every time we get new data. And here, either of these have been, sort of pre-cached under the covers, or you can just keep exploring, and Lexio is just writing these on the fly.
And do you guys have?
Sorry, go.
Yeah. Do you have a recommendation on what the frequency should be? Does it depend? Should it be on a daily basis, or even more frequent than that?
Yeah, I think our current default is about 4 hours we pull data in. So we're not trying to, we're not trying to catch that some IoT valve in a factory somewhere is suddenly reading above its measure, and now we're setting off alerts, and we got to go run and hit the switch before the factory blows up. Like it's not sort of real time in that sense, but it's also we do want people to be looking at this or getting at least being updated by Lexio on a daily basis, or morning and afternoon, that kind of thing. So pulling throughout the day is part of the way we do that.
And George, one thing that you'll notice as a user is you may start at a certain frequency, but then the more you start using it, the more you're dissatisfied. So
right,
like our own data right now gets pulled in every 4 hours. And I'm starting to ask myself, like, why is it not pulled in more frequently?
I've had the same experience, Cassidy. I see Slack announcements that are exciting, and it's like, oh, but like we haven't hit that 4 hour window in Lexio yet.
Exactly. So I think that's part of the maturity. Some people may be putting it in weekly, but our vision is this needs to get to daily and then multiple times a day.
And we have a comment here. You mentioned pulling in data from third parties. How many platforms does it support, or can you just remap most databases?
Yeah, so we through this connection with Stitch, that we have seamless connection to, I think, like 100 different, a lot of the Salesforce and Marketo and HubSpot and a lot of the sort of really big names. Stitch handles that, but like you thought, we can really work on any type of structured data. I'll show you just super briefly what this looks like. here in our demo app. But this is to work on top of just sort of arbitrary databases. We have a mapping experience here that I won't show in detail. It's a little more of the technical. This is business users don't see this. This is set up by the admins. But you can see here we're mapping from columns in the data to the entity types, to those elements of the ontology, telling us a little bit more about possible drivers. So this is some of what, when we're doing a POC or we sign a new customer, this is some of the experience that that goes through to make sure Lexio knows what's in their data. But this having this experience allows us to sit on top of any well-structured column data.
Yeah, I would say like there's obviously parts of in Lexio where we're trying to reinvent what's done in BI. Getting data in is not one of those. So it works very similar to any other BI tool in terms of how it connects the data or you push data to it.
That's fantastic.
And it does, to an earlier question, it doesn't need big data. It doesn't, we write great stories off CSVs. Like the more historical context we have, the better we can detect outliers, the more we can compare it to previous points in time, that kind of stuff. But it doesn't need, we don't need terabytes of data because we have to throw it into this huge model that needs to learn. Lexio, because it has that knowledge already, you can get nice stories out of a CSV and keep that updated, that kind of stuff.
So right now it writes stories in English. Are there plans to include other languages too?
Yes, not concrete plans at this point, but yeah, that's we consistently get this question, and our consistent answer is the market is so big just for English that we're starting there. But Lexio we're not going to stay English only forever. And there's two different ways we've looked at supporting multilingual. One is by doing some kind of just translation service over Lexio stories. In that model, Lexio would generate in English, and then we go to Bing or AWS or Google or whoever, have them translate that, which is one possibility. It opens up the sort of opens the crack a bit that the translations could be off. But that's one possibility. And the other possibility is having Lexio just natively generate stories in other language. Is about probably 85. Yeah, I would say 85% of Lexio's story generation process is actually independent of language. A lot of it is figuring out what to say, what pieces of information to include, what comparisons to include, how to lay it out in the story, what the right annotation should be. All of that kind of stuff is independent of being English or being sort of language based at all. And so we've tried to sequester that, and we have hackathons of Lexio generating in Mandarin, I think, and sort of other languages. We haven't committed to building that out, but we will for sure.
I'm sure.
I'd love to add something to here that Nate's probably not giving himself credit for. There's another way to train the system to write too, and that is like a hackathon we did that's called Write Like Me. And so you can envision a future where a company is communicating in a certain way, and today you can go set that up in the mapping and the ontology, as Nate mentioned. Nate also has a vision with the team of, I can just train the system of how this company writes, and Lexio will write like that company. And so I think when we think about language, there's also syntax too, of like, how do you communicate? And when you see that, like in a hackathon, you're like, that is amazing. So it's like, it's writing like George versus just writing generically like Lexio. And I think that's, equally, if not bigger opportunity to kind of personalize.
Oh yeah, sounds amazing.
Yeah.
So I see that we have 6 minutes left. I have a few very short questions. So when I hear you, I remember what I said about Cassidy, that with open-minded people you can do a lot of things. And what I heard today are really things that I couldn't have imagined that could be possible. So I really congratulate you for that and really admire your work. And I wanted to ask, so I see that you're constantly improving the software, but how long did it take you to get here where it is right now?
Nate, why don't you answer that?
Well, I've worked in NarrativeScience for 11 years now. So it's been it's definitely been a long journey with a lot of learning along the way. And like Cassidy said, a lot of, initially we came out writing these little league stories. The company was founded came out of a grad school project to write baseball stories. And it was like, there's all this data in box office scores. Can we do something with that? And can Lexio write these stories? Or not Lexio, is there some machine, and we called it Stats Monkey, was sort of the level of maturity of the organization at the time. But Stats Monkey worked really well and wrote those stories. And so that's what got us, I would say, just excited about the possibility of computers generating stories. And there was a lot of fun moments where people, they just wouldn't believe, like the story would say, well, the tiny sluggers were behind, but they came back in the fourth inning off a triple, and that ran Marty and Susie back to home. And just the idea that a system could produce that kind of language was mind blowing. This was before Siri, before Alexa. This was, a long time ago in our terms. And so that we really got the bug from that. And then like Cassidy said, as we've really narrowed in on where the most pain is being felt and where this technology can alleviate the most pain, that's where we are now with Lexio. And yeah, we feel really good about it. Initially, we talked about should this just focus on a particular domain, but the message we kept hearing from the market was that this isn't the problem that Lexio addresses is not a sales department problem or an HR department problem. It's a problem for business users across the company. And so that's what gave us the confidence to take this broader approach and say, no, we're gonna work hard on the ontology. We're gonna work hard on Lexio's knowledge of BI so that it can write across all these different domains, because all of these users in all these different domains really need the value and the stories that Lexio can provide. So it's been a long time, but it's only been since sort of having this out in market as September, October of last year. So it's new. It's sort of new. It's new out there, although a lot of the thinking and a little bit of the technology has been worked on for a while now.
Right.
Well, I see why it's gaining a lot of market, and I think there are a lot of people and companies interested in what you have to offer.
For sure.
Yeah, it's been really fun.
And I looked at some of your videos, and I see that you have a really, really nice corporate culture where, people are teamwork. It seemed to me that it's very highly valued, and everyone's voice and opinion, which I think is great. Yeah. And I congratulate you for that as well. So where can people find you? So your website is NarrativeScience.com.
That's correct. Website's NarrativeScience.com. We just updated it today, so go check it out. So the team's very excited about that. You can also
it looks awesome.
You can also find us on obviously LinkedIn, Twitter, every social platform. You can email me at cshield@narrativescience.com if you want to learn more, and Nate as well. So we're out there. We're easy to find.
That's awesome. Well, please definitely follow Nate and Cassidy on LinkedIn too, and check out narrativescience.com.
And I have one last question that is not related to this. What's the cat's name, Nate? I see your cat in the background.
That's Black Bart. Yeah, we had two. We got two cats at the same time. We named them both after pirates. So he's Black Bart, and the other one is Sandokan.
I love it.
Perfect.
I'm glad you stayed quiet for the talk today.
Yeah, George and Diana, I just want to say thanks for giving us the opportunity to come on your show and share what we do. We really enjoyed it.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks everybody for listening in too.
Yes, thank you everybody.
Thank you everybody for being here and for your questions, for your support. Thank you very much, Cassidy and Nate. It was really, really enlightening, and good luck with everything that you're planning to do in the future.
Thank you very much.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.